Welcome back everyone to Gacha Interact. Today we're going to be looking at the first half of the 2.3 Honkai Star Rail banners today. First character is going to be Firefly, and the second half is going to have Ruan Mei. Let's go through both of these banners and see whether or not these characters are a good pulling option for you. And if you do enjoy the video, go ahead and like and subscribe and check out the rest of the channel for other videos you may be interested in. We also do have a Discord where you can join and you can talk with us and other members, and we have a lot of fun in there. Now, on to the video.
The first character we want to talk about is Firefly, and first of all, talking about what she is and what she does. Basically, she's a DPS character that is focusing in destruction. So now jumping right into what she does in her basic attack and her skills and her ultimates, what she focuses on is using her ultimate to then enhance her skill and her basic attacks to do more damage, and she heavily focuses on break effect and going multiple times, so a lot of speed and break effect are going to be highly necessary for this character. Now her ultimate states that she will jump into a complete combustion state, and then her action will be enhanced or going forward by 100%, and like I was talking about before, she will gain an enhanced basic attack and skill. In this time period as well, while in this state, she'll increase her speed, and then when she uses her enhanced basic or her enhanced skill, she will increase her own weakness break efficiency by 50%, and the break damage received by the enemy targets that she hits by 20%, which will go until that entire attack after her ultimate will end. She also will have a countdown and an action order that will basically count down the complete combustion state, where Sam will exit out of this state, and that has a countdown of a fixed speed of 70. So basically you're going to be trying to use your ultimate to then jump into these enhanced basic and skill usages. Now the biggest thing here, as much as the basic attack does some good damage as well, the biggest thing I think is going to be in her enhanced skill. Now this restores HP by a set amount for her, by about 25% of her max HP, but it will apply fire weakness to a single target enemy as well, which is going to be extremely useful for if you go into fights that aren't necessarily focusing on fire weakness. That's going to be extremely necessary for you. All of this including her talent as well, that the lower HP that she has, the less damage that she will receive, and then when her HP is 20% or lower, the damage reduction reaches its maximum effect, reducing up to 40% of damage that she will take. During the complete combustion state that she gets from her ultimate, the damage reduction remains at its maximum effect, and the effect resistance increases by 30%. Something interesting and very nice about this, considering it's so focused on energy for this character, if energy is lower than 50% when the battle starts, you will regenerate energy to 50% of all of your energy, and once energy is regenerated to its maximum, you will dispel all debuffs on her.
Alright, now that we've talked about Firefly, let's look at the other side of the banners, which has Ruan Mei. Now, this is going to be her first rerun, I believe, from when she did originally come out in 1.6, and I have to say she's a very good character, a good Harmony Ice character at that. Now, looking at her basic attack, there's really nothing special tied to this. Like I just said, she is a Harmony character, so she's heavily a supportive unit, so not a lot of personal damage is going on in her kit, but there actually could be an argument for that I'll talk about that later. Looking right at Ruan Mei's skill, this states that after using her skill, Ruan Mei will gain Overtone, lasting for 3 turns, and you can actually see this in the background gameplay. When you use Ruan Mei, she has those 3 little dots right under her character art, or the model from when you actually are playing the game. This lets you know that how many stacks of Overtone you have, and this will reduce by 1 at the start of every time Ruan Mei's turn starts. When Ruan Mei has Overtone, all allies' damage increases by 32% at level 10 of the talent, and weakness break efficiency increases by a set 50%. Looking at her ultimate, Ruan Mei deploys a field that lasts for 2 turns. The field's duration decreases by 1 once again at the start of Ruan Mei's every turn. While inside the field, all allies' all-type resistance penetration increases by 25%, assuming you have this talent at level 10, and their attacks apply Thanatoplum Rebloom to the enemy's hit. When these enemies attempt to recover from weakness break, Thanatoplum Rebloom is triggered, extending the duration of their weakness break state, which delays their action by an amount equal to 20% of Ruan Mei's break effect plus 10%, and dealing break damage equal to 50% of Ruan Mei's ice break damage. So that's a lot going on there in the ultimate, but basically in a nutshell, you're increasing your other units' brightness effect essentially, or more specifically their resistance penetration, and you're delaying your enemies, basically just extending their weakness break state, so you can put in a little bit more damage before they recover. Another quick thing with Ruan Mei is her talent that is going to be happening passively. She does increase your speed by 10% when you have this at level 10 for the entire team, excluding herself though. And when allies break an enemy target's weakness, Ruan Mei deals damage to this enemy target. her break damage worth 120% of her personal ice break damage.
Now that we've looked at the actual character banners, let's go ahead and jump over into the light cone banners. Now, looking first at the Light Cone 4, specifically made for Firefly, the ability states that it increases the wearer's break effect by 60%. Now, we already talked about in Firefly's kit how useful break effect is already going to be, so that's going to help out a lot even more. And when the wearer deals break damage to an enemy target, it will inflict routed on the enemy, which lasts for 2 turns. Targets afflicted with routed receive 24% increased break damage from the wearer, and their speed is lowered by 20%.
Quickly looking at Ruan Mei's light cone, this is called Past Self in Mirror. This light cone will increase the wearer's break effect by 60%. And when the wearer uses their ultimate, it will increase all allies' damage by 24%, lasting for 3 turns. Should the wearer's break effect exceed or equal 150%, 1 skill point will be recovered. Also, at the start of each wave, all allies regenerate 10 energy immediately. Effects of the same type cannot stack.
Now that we've gone over both banners and kind of quickly gone over some kits as well as the light cone abilities and whatnot, let's go ahead and jump into some questions that are probably going to be asked of a lot of people, especially people that are going to be pulling. So Rift, that first question is, do you need either character on your account? Kind of how valuable is each character? So at least for me, what I was looking at from, just taking a second to really think about these characters, it seems like Firefly is going to be a lot more valuable probably maybe right now if you have someone like Ruan Mei. I mean, we just looked at the light cone increasing, energy and whatnot, and, that's obviously going to help Firefly getting that ultimate since it's so specific and helpful for her, and that's kind of the major part of the kit is to then get those enhanced later. So that seems like it's really, really necessary, as well as just in general, I mean, a great buff to some other characters. So if you have someone like Ruan Mei and, you're looking for a break effect and that whole idea, as well as a great fire damage unit, I think that, Firefly is going to do some really good things. I know a lot of people are kind of wondering about her damage capabilities, but I think at least in general, she should be doing pretty well, and if you have some of the right characters, it'll be kind of, at least for my taste, I think Firefly is going to be pretty useful. So Rift, what do you think about Ruan Mei though? Like, what does that kind of look like?
I think Ruan Mei has a lot of value. Around her first run, I kind of underestimated her a little bit, and maybe that's just because skill issue, and I just didn't understand her kit all too well. I didn't really care to look into it all that much. I was just focused on other units. But now that we just had Boot Hill, who we know works a lot off of break effect, and now here's Firefly kind of working off the same thing. It kind of feels like we're in this break effect meta, or it's kind of a big deal right now. So a character like Ruan Mei just, really makes sense. So even if you're not pulling Firefly and you don't already have Ruan Mei, if you did pull Boot Hill, I think Ruan Mei can only make your account better, because not only is she good for those break effect specific characters, but even regular characters like, I don't know, Zila or just Jing Liu. I mean, she's going to be dealing her own personal ice break damage, that is Ruan Mei, when you break shields. So she is, in a weird sense, still kind of in the strangest way possible, she's kind of a sub DPS, but that isn't really the focus. The focus is buffing other characters, but she does have that touch of damage. And the reason I know I can say that is because I have Argenti in the game, but he's still at level 40. And don't ask me why, but because he is, I was actually using one of my friends' support Ruan Mei's, and she was enabling my level 40 Argenti to deal like 50,000 damage on his little AoE hits and stuff. I mean, we're talking a level 40 character. The weapon was level 1, no relics. And so I know that's all coming from Ruan Mei. So she does add a little bit, kind of like a cherry on top for extra damage. She's buffing everyone else and just really increasing that break effect type stuff, especially for Boot Hill and Firefly. I think she's going to be a really valuable pickup, and I really think you should consider her. And her light cone is very valuable too. The next question we look at is, what elements or paths or just roles is your account really in need of? Or maybe you could also ask the antithesis, who else already fills this role on your account? So Vixen, what are your initial thoughts with looking at these two characters with that question?
Well, looking first at Firefly, I think in general, if you're looking for someone who's focusing on, fire damage, there are some other characters that already do that, but kind of like how Acheron can hit multiple different weaknesses, they don't have to have lightning weakness on them for her to actually break shields in her ultimate. You can kind of, in a different way, kind of jury-rig it for Firefly, because once again, that enhanced skill is going to put fire weakness on an enemy target that they hit with that enhanced skill. And while doing so, you're allowing yourself to go into fights and whatnot that necessarily aren't maybe built for fire characters, and you can kind of force her into that role. And so I think a lot of, players, if you're looking for a fire character, she's probably going to be an extremely good character to run with. In terms of some other characters that are going to fill this role, the only other fire destruction character we actually have is Hook. But in terms of other destruction characters like Firefly Ruan Mei, Jing Liu, Blade, and even Clara, specifically looking at Blade and Jing Liu, already kind of have their special comp to the side. I think if you already have some of these characters in Firefly Ruan Mei or Jing Liu or Blade, you may not need Firefly in terms of a DPS character, but if you're looking for, once again, trying to get that strong foothold in the fire aspect of your account, I think especially with her, once again, applying that fire weakness with her enhanced skill, it's going to be extremely good for, I think, most players actually to pick her up.
Yeah, and my take on this is that if you already do have Ruan Mei from her initial run, then why not pick up Firefly? Because I think they're going to go hand in hand very well. So the next question we ask is, what kinds of teams are you trying to build? And this does kind of piggyback off of what we were just talking about. But like I just said, Firefly being break effect heavy, and I talked about Boot Hill earlier too, working a lot around break effect. Ruan Mei, once again, is going to greatly benefit those kinds of characters. And who knows if we get characters even later on in the game that have to do with break effect, whether they're more DPSs like Firefly and Boot Hill, or just more supports for that. But because we don't have any supports right now, at least besides Ruan Mei is very specific and very unique, at least right now, because she's like one of the only supports that specifically helps, and I mean greatly helps, break effect. And so I think she's just a valuable character to at least consider. Now, if you don't have other Harmony units at all, like I know me, I don't have a single 5-star Harmony unit. And so when I look at that, Ruan Mei, I don't know, would be my first pick in a Harmony character. I'd probably still want a character like Sparkle over that. But that's also then again because I'm a Zila main, and so that can change things. But I think in the most generalized aspect, Ruan Mei is definitely best at what she does, but maybe some other Harmony characters I think would have just a slight edge over her if you're looking at, okay, my first 5-star Harmony unit to go for.
I totally agree. Jumping alongside that aspect, going back to that last question, we talked about Firefly and what, who else could kind of fit that role. In terms of Ruan Mei, really looking at some other, Harmony characters, some other people that could, quote unquote, steal the spotlight. We got Harmony Trailblazer recently, and as good as Harmony Trailblazer is and can really be extremely helpful, and even characters like Robin and whatnot, I think still in general, Sparkle is going to be kind of the echelon of the character that you're going to grab, not only with the crit damage boost, but in general, everything that she can kind of do with the skill points, buffing that as well, getting the amount of skill points you can have a maximum to 7. All of these things are going to be extremely helpful. Even characters like Bronya are going to be good for bringing up the character a lot faster. So each time during these different things, I think, in general, Ruan Mei, like you were talking about, Rift, is a great character, but in terms of maybe, in terms of supporting a DPS as a Harmony unit, she really is a little bit more focused on being a support for break effect characters, which thankfully recently we've gotten a few. Looking at the last question specifically that we have is, do you need the light cones? Now, obviously, in general, when looking at light cones, it's not like our Topo and Octopus with Genshin, where you kind of have that 50-50 of getting, even if you win the 75-25 of getting the on-banner, one of the on-banner 5-star weapons, here with light cones, you don't have 2 5-stars on the actual banner, so it's pretty easy. It's a lot easier to actually obviously get the weapon, and so also in turn, you're not losing to the other weapon. For instance, you're not going to lose to Ruan Mei's weapon if you go for Fireflies. So talking about that specifically, the biggest question is, do you actually need the light cone? Here, I do think that Firefly's weapon is extremely useful, and always with most DPS, I've said this in the last one, I say it with a lot of things in general, if you have a DPS character, I always heavily suggest going for the light cone in Star Rail or in Genshin, and Withering Waves going for the weapon, just because it's going to make your life a lot easier, whereas the supports can sometimes use some 4-star, options, or maybe some standard 5-stars that are maybe could still be used a little bit differently, and they may not be perfect, but it's better to have, if you're going to go for a 5-star light cone in Star Rail's case, you're going to want to focus on trying to grab the light cone, I think, specifically for your DPSs.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. It does feel a little bit more comfy, just like you said, having your main DPS damage dealers having their light cones, you can really see the difference. You can greatly feel the difference. It's a massive upgrade in most cases. But I will add on to this, and kind of looking at Ruan Mei now, I don't know about you, Vixen, but with Star Rail, I feel like supportive characters just get so much more of a buff from the light cone when compared to maybe Genshin. I don't know if you have something to input on that, but when we look at light cones for supports, and I'm thinking even about the past supports we've had, Robin, Sparkle, and so on, right? The light cones are just always crazy good. When you just read them, like, oh my goodness, is this even legal? So, and just quickly going over Ruan Mei's, you're increasing that break effect. That's going to be good. We know she works around buffing with that. A lot of the stuff she is doing in her kit actually scales on her break effect, including her personal damage. And then also you're increasing your allies' damage for 3 turns. That's pretty good and universal, to be honest. And then you're recovering a skill point. You're giving everyone else energy. That is stuff that can actually be used on your other Harmony units, even the 4 stars. So I think if there's one exception to the rule of never pull the light cone unless you have the character, I think it would be Harmony light cones first.
Now looking at actual Eidolons for both of the characters, talking about obviously, are they going to be worth it at E0, or maybe if you're kind of looking at some Eidolons to actually go for, looking at both of them in general. Looking first at Firefly's Eidolons, in general, I think you're probably going to want to focus actually on getting maybe the E1. I don't necessarily know if she's going to be, stellar at E0, but I think in general, you're probably going to want some Eidolons. There has been a little bit of an uproar in the community, at least, of maybe a little bit of a lackluster in terms of damage and whatnot coming from Firefly. Now that could change obviously as soon as she drops, but I do want to just state that for people that are looking to pull her, to actually just maybe keep that in mind for what you're going to do with her in the future. Possibly think about trying to go for some Eidolons. Now in terms of looking at the Eidolons, obviously looking at the first 2, since those are the easiest really to get. The first Eidolon, it states that when using the enhanced skill, ignore 15% of the target's defense, and the enhanced skill does not consume skill points. Obviously, that's going to be extremely useful. That will allow your other characters to use skill points as well, or use her skill in general later when you, obviously, because this is only talking about the enhanced skill. The second Eidolon states that when using the enhanced basic attack or the enhanced skill in her complete combustion state that you get for the ult, that defeats an enemy or causes them to be weakness broken, Sam immediately gains 1 turn. This effect can be triggered again after 1 turn as well. So personally here, I think that the first Eidolon is probably going to be a little bit better than the second Eidolon in terms of, is the second Eidolon worth to go to, or is the E1 okay to have? I think personally you can stop at the E1. The E2 is nice, but it's kind of like, talking about some of the characters, which one is, do I have to get to E2 or is E1 okay? I think personally E1 is fine in terms of Firefly.
And then just jumping over to Ruan Mei, looking at her first 2 Eidolons. Her first one just states that while the ultimate's field is deployed, the damage dealt by all allies ignores 20% of the target's defense, which is pretty insane. And then the second one states that with Ruan Mei on the field, all allies increase their attack by 40% when dealing damage to enemies with weakness break. Now, both of those are pretty good, but I think the first one does stand out as a sore thumb to most people watching right now. That one I think is way more universal. It's just a flat damage increase for basically your entire team. Anyone's going to deal more damage. Now the second one's good, but it's limited to only attack. So let's say you're using a character that doesn't scale on attack. Maybe let's say you're using Blade, right? He does like to use a lot more HP, and it's not that he can't use that attack, but that E1 definitely is going to be helping him more. And so if you're going to pull Eidolons on Ruan Mei, I'd say consider the E1, but I wouldn't even worry about looking past that.
We hope that this video could help you decide on whether these characters or light cones coming up on the next banner are for you. As always, if you have any suggestions that may help some other players, go ahead and let us know down in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and check out our Discord as well. Thank you again for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.